See, we are trying to understand the cross account connectivity. Let's say I have an account A and account B. So here in account A, I have a cluster and then EKS cluster where I am running two parts, and then the goal of this exercise is this both part 1. From part 1 I'm able to list the S3 bucket which is in a different account. We can perform copy or upload, but just for simplicity's sake we are just trying to do the list this S3 bucket. Same part 2, it also lists the S3 bucket. This can be done in multiple ways, right? This S3 bucket is a different thing. So what we can do here is, so when I default create this cluster basically, and then it is going to give one OADC provider URL, okay, that I'll show basically. Now this pod 1 is using service account 1, which is annotated with this IAM role. Basically using this IAM role, so what you need to do, list this S3 bucket. So what you can do, this IAM role in turn can assume this IAM role to list the bucket. So if you listen carefully, this SA currently annotated with this IAM role, meaning this pod 1 has this IAM role. Using this IAM role, we need to assume another IAM role which is in a different account to list this S3 bucket. Okay, or else a simple way is, so now let's directly annotate. Just for differentiation I create another IAM role here. So directly this service account, instead of annotating with this IAM role, I am directly annotating with this IAM role, so that this IAM role has a permission to uh, list this S3 bucket. The advantage of using this one, the second one is, you no need to write any extra code to assume this IAM role, because it is done at the service account annotation level. You can just directly go inside this part and do AWS S3 LS and you should be able to list this bucket. But in this case, if you directly do AWS S3 LS, it is going to give the buckets inside this account, not this account, because currently this service account annotated with this IAM role. So what you need to do, once goes inside this one, you need to write AWS. I'm just for the simplicity's sake, I'm just using one Linux container. Inside that, I'm using a command line. So, or else if you are writing a Java application, that Java application or whatever has to assume this IAM role, using which it should be able to list the bucket. Now, how this permissions of assuming the roles and all works is, now that's what we're going to see in the screens, basically AWS console. Let's say I'm bringing up, this is the, which is in the Chrome one, right? This is account A. For running all these things, what I'm doing is, I in the account A itself, in this account A itself, in the account A itself, I created one EC2 instance here, uh, like one EC2 here. Where is this? One EC2. So from here I'm trying to operate this cluster. So this is the EC2 instance. So now we have the cluster created here, AWS cluster created here. So now if you see, I'm going to check the SA. There are two SAs, service account and service. The default one, keep this one asset, this one and this one. So if you see, this is the role one. I'll put side by side. This is the S3 access SA is the SA1, S3 cross account access SA is SA2. I didn't use the name, I've just used the simpler names here. Okay, so now if I describe the S3 account SA, so this is what I described. This is using the December 1 SA role. This is this IAM role. This IAM role it is using. So this is what annotation is used. And if I describe the other SA2, which is S3 cross account access, if you see S3.
One moment. Here's what I found.
S3 cross S3 cross access. S3 cross access SA. if you see here, this is going to use the, see carefully observe here, this is this 8160, it is trying to assume the same IAM role which is in this account, but this one is annotated with this IAM role which is in a different account. That's what you see here. This is what annotation I have done. So role to be assumed is, this name is basically IM2 role in cross account to be assumed. That's what I keep. Just annotating this one is not sufficient. So here this IAM role should trust this one to use my assume my IAM role. Let similarly here also this IAM role should trust this service account. Hey service account, use my assume my role. Here also this IAM role, hey a service account to assume my role, I'm giving a permission. That's what we should say, right? How that is done, first let's check the first one here. So this is the role, it's assumed, right? This IM role v1 is this one, December SA role pods here. So here if you see carefully, so we are saying this is the role permissions, what it has, it is there. So in the trust relationship, if you see, it is trusting the tokens issued by the OADC provider. Now I'll come to those OADC provider. What is OADC provider, right? When you create this EKS cluster itself, we are going to get one OADC OpenAD Connect provider URL. It is not associated yet. So the moment I create a EKS cluster, if I just go EKS cluster, right, through a Terraform or whatever the way, once you create this EKS cluster, uh, it's a different region it is. So you are going to guess the OpenID provider connector URL. So this is not just it will be there. So what it means is this is the one issuing a tokens to uh, this pods basically. So when what happens is when you spin up a pod, since this OADC provider URL is there, inside an API server, inside AKS cluster has an API server, right? It will internally connect with this OpenID connector provider and issues a token to each of this pod. So basically how that pod, these are all internal behind the scenes what happens. If you open any pod, right, internal to pod, that whatever the token you got it from this OADC provider, it will be mounted in the volume mounts actually. So I think I'll show in the end, like somewhere if I get time. So uh, so this pod has a volume, the token will be there. So every time pod gets restarted or whatever are created, right, it will internally this API server will talk to this OADC provider URL and mounts the token to this one. So what it means is now pod 1 has a token, okay, and similarly part 2 also will have a token. So now this OADC provider, what it will do here, right? So now this pod 1 has a token and it is trying to assume this IAM role. This IAM role, what it does is, hey, I'll not know whether the token you gave is right or not. I'm going to trust this OADC provider basically. So if the token is given by that OADC provider, I'll allow you to use my IAM role. That is what it is going to do. So to do that, as I said initially, when a cluster gets created, this OpenID Connect URL is there, right? You need to add that one in a open, what do you call, IAM OpenID connector providers here. So if you open here, so meaning that it is an external third party. I am not authenticating you. I'm giving that authentication job to somebody else. I'm trusting that. So instead that I'm trusting somebody that will take care of your authentication. So if you see here, I am providers, identity providers. So this is the URL matching here. So I'm going to take this one. Uh, so this is what, right, API connected to, so I'll add it. So now what it means is this cluster, right, what is this? Not cluster, IAM role. So I'm trusting this one, whatever the token will have, as I said, token will be mounted in that as a volume in this one, right? If the token string contains so that is a basically a JW token. JW token, you will have a header, payload, and the signature, right? In the inside a uh, what do you call payload, you'll have a sub and audience, right? So if as long as that is matching with this one, so I'm allowing you to. So what it is the token whatever. Okay, here I'll go. Token whatever you're giving to me, okay, that token has these values, that string equals to this and this, okay, the subs and odd equals to this, and that is given by this one. I'm allowing you to use that one, okay. Now let's go and see that how that works. Okay, now I'll use this IAM role, but simply I'll not go to here. The first step is I'll try to list the buckets which are there in the account, this account itself. Forget about second one. First, let's check this process. That is basically IRSA, which is like IAM roles for service accounts. So this first service account, this IAM role we are attaching. Then we'll go for a cross account. First, let's check the internal account. Okay. Now our job is to this pod has to list the buckets which are in the same account. Okay. So now I'm in this EC2 cluster. I'm clearing this one. Okay. So get pods. Okay. I'm in this one first pod. So this is the one which is using the account which is internal account. This pod I'm talking about. This is the pod I'm talking about. This has service account which is under this IAM role. Now I'll go into that one. Q capital mode and S3 list pod. So now I'm here, right? So I'll be here in the, let's see where I'm inside a container. If I see PW, I'm at a root folder, right? Now AWS S3 LS. If I give, it will give the accounts which are in this my own account. East one bucket, Vamsi, triple G, all these things. If you see here, these are all buckets in my own account. Meaning that this account buckets, the same account buckets. See here all these buckets. Triple image and east one bucket, east bucket, all these things. That's what it displayed. Right now, how this worked, right? I want so let's see that where that token and all will how this authentication works behind the scenes, right? Let's see that behind the scenes. I'll get into that one and I'll show the token also, where the token, how the token is there. So it will be there in the path. So I'm going to cd. I'll go here, service account. So if I see I'm at this part where run secret EKS service account. What happens is this you are not doing behind the scenes when the pod gets created. This is going to talk this API server of this EKS cluster. API servers of this EKS cluster going to talk to that OADC URL whatever created using this EKS cluster, not the provider ADC, and it will generate a token, and that token will be stored here. So if I just see here, ls. So here, right, let me do cat token. This is a JWT token. This is a encrypted one, right? Let's see what it is here. Okay. Now I'm just copying this one. So if you see that JWT token, I think he did not copy. I'm copying. See here. So as I was saying, right, subject, subject, and then what is the other thing we are checking? Uh, so here the subject and then audience AUD. So subject and audience. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So this token string basically has AUD as SCSAmazon.com and then subject as system service account. This is service account. This is a, and then default namespace and service account name S3 access SC. As long as this is there, so let's copy this one, right? This is what we are checking here. So if you check here, this is one. As long as this is matching and this token is issued by this uh, one, we are agreeing that. So the account ID won't be there part of token. So let's see this. Yeah. So this is the issuer, right? Uh, OADC case is this is issued by this. That's fine. Allowing. This is how it works. So, so I think hope you are clear, right? Now this is the one. It is clear. Now this from this pod I want to get S3 bucket list S3 bucket which is in a different account. So now this is by default annotated with this IAM role. That's why when I just go inside this one, I didn't use any assume role again. Anything I did not use, right? So I'm just clearing this one again. So AWS S3 LS if I use directly it is going to give me buckets of my this one, right? Because this is annotated with this one. Now manually I need to so this using this IAM role. Now this pod has to assume this IAM role, right? So how do we set? Now this IAM role has to trust what now here? This IAM role, right? Because indirectly this pod has this IAM role, so you need to trust this IAM role has to trust this IAM role. So now let's go and check the different account. In this account B, so the account B, okay, this is the IAM role. So this, okay, this is, I just named this as a not trusted OADC. You'll understand what it is. So in the trust relationship, instead of giving an IAM role here, what I give principal everything in this one. I can directly give the ARN of what do you call directly that IAM role, but I just give the this 8059 total. This is my account number of uh, uh, account A. So if you go and check here, this is the account number. See here ends with 8157. That is what I gave here. 8157. So now this IAM role is trusting this IAM role because it's trusting everything in account here, but this IAM role is trusting. So now from this part, I'm trying to assume this IAM role. So how do I assume using this one, right? So this is STS assume role. I'm trying to assume IAM role client in class or not trust this name of this role. Okay. Name of the role in account B. So just be consider this is Safari, whatever I am opening is account B, the Chrome is account A. So IAM role in cross account not trusted OADC, right? That role I'm trying to assume. And then I'm just keeping it. Let's see. Now from where I should assume, right? I should assume from inside a pod. So I'm inside this pod. So I'm clearing the screen. So I'm giving. So I got this temporary token state. I'll store that in an environment variable. Basically, what happens is when you assume that, right? So it will give a temporary tokens. So here, this all assumption, like forget about the second one now. When it happened, right? When I did AWS S3 LS here, so earlier, right, when I did AWS3LS, you are not doing that, assuming this IAM role and all like explicitly. Internally, what it happens is this pod will assume that role. The temporary tokens will be stored inside your pod's AWS configuration. So automatically it will list it. So you are not explicitly doing because you did annotation with the service account to this IAM role. That's where IRSA comes into picture. But in this case, you are trying to assume this one. So you have to explicitly write this AWS S3 assume role. Basically, you are assuming that role, right? So now this one, let's export this one into a environment variable. This process, whatever I'm doing, if it is if the you are trying to assume a role which is annotated with SA, right? That is implicit. It will be done. You don't need to write that AWS STS assume role and all. So let's take that. See. So anyway, after this one, I'm going to delete all these things. Even if you see tell all the session token, I'm going to get this session token and then access ID. Let's run this. here. So now I'm setting into this environment variables. That did not copy correctly. Let me copy one more time. Okay. So now if I do AWS S3 LS, see it gave S3 bucket Vamsi cross account. This is in a different account. So this, so let's see this S3 is right. So here if you see my S3 bucket, S3 bucket Vamsi cross account, S3 bucket Vamsi cross account. So what did we do here? So if I recap correctly, so by default this pod has this IAM role. So, and whatever this IAM role permissions are there, you no need to write any extra code to assume anything. So you can upload to this bucket as long as this IAM role has that right policies, right? You can get this bucket, you can delete all that you can do inside an account basically. So now you are trying to assume this IAM role which is in a different account, right? Using this IAM role. Okay, so for that what you have to do, you have to write a code that AWS ST is assume role, or if it AWS SDK, and then assume this role, and from there you're going to do. So this after assuming that role, the temporary credentials will be there for some time. After that, again you have to assume a role and give this one. Instead of doing this, okay, this first have this pod annotated with existing. I mean that same account IAM role, and then using that IAM role, assuming this one, we can do a simpler thing, right? Directly, we can assume the IAM role present in this account, and using this one less this one, because I created it. Technically I can assume this role directly and do this one. I wanted to show a differentiation, right? That's why I created another IAM role here. So, and another pod here. This pod, it will not go like first assume this role and doing again this role. Directly this pod service account will be annotated with this IAM role and do this one. That's what in the second one. So if you see here, so I'm coming out of this pod. So if you see get pods, this second pod here, right? This second pod is using this. So if I use kubectl this dive pod, I'm giving this pod. Sorry. So if you see, right, this is annotated with uh, service account S3 cross SE. That S3 cross SE is this one. S3 cross SE. This is, if you check in the beginning I showed, is this is annotated with this IAM role. So I can do it again just to, let me copy this one. To describe SA. See this one, this is in a different account, it's assuming the role in cross account to be assumed. So this role it's going to assume in the, this is an account B. So if you see here, this is going to assume the is that, yeah, role in cross account to be assumed. Role in cross account to be assumed, and 678 account number 678 here. So role in cross account. Now you can think, right? So similar how this IAM role trusted this service account. Now this IAM role should trust this service account, right? So that's similar. So now this IAM role is trusting when the same thing, right? In the this, so basically as I said, this also will have a JW token mounted to this pod, right? So that basically what it is saying, the token what your pod you are holding, that pod should have that string equals to system S3 cross account SA. If you see the previous one, it is a different one, right? So this JW token, so it is S3 access SA, but here you should have S3 cross access SC. And here one important thing what we need to make sure is this OADC provider. I said I'll talk later, right? So by default, right, basically if you see carefully here, this is a federated, meaning that hey, the token whatever issued by your AADC, for this one also who issues the token, this OADC provider only, right? So meaning that EKS cluster you will get OpenID connector URL. This is the one. So now this should trust this OADC provider, right? So basically to trust this OADC provider, the provider section should be there in the same account. So what we do here, right? So once a cluster gets created using that URL, whatever I mentioned here, right? So this is the URL we're going to get, right? Once the cluster gets created, you get this URL. Yeah, this OpenID connector URL, right? You come here to another account where you want to assume, right? In the IAM role, IAM identity provider, we'll go and add a provider. Give this provider name. Basically, you need to choose OpenID Connect and give that endpoint. And the audience sts.amazon.com, whatever that we get, right? We'll give that and then add a provider. So now, if you carefully see, this is not trusting this one. You have a copy of this OIDC provider here, right? So this is going to trust this one. Instead of trusting this IAM role is same thing. So if you see the account number here, uh, IAM role. So this account number, own account number is there, 678. So I'm trusting. This is trusting this own OADC provider, which is a copy of this one, right? So the token issued by this or this doesn't matter, but you are giving here token issued by this one has this uh, string equals to this, then I'm allowing it. So now I said all that, right? Now I'll go and I'll show how, now without doing any assume role and all, because now this already has this role annotated, right? I don't need to assume again to do this one because that all happened behind the scenes, right? So now I'll go here and simply so so EXEC interactive mode. I'll go to this one. What is that name? Let me log. S3 list pod access, right? So go to this one. Hmm. Cut it. Yeah, now inside this bucket PWD. Now I simply do, and I'm not assuming anything. So it should give the class account bucket name. See, it gave S3 bucket once you access. So now using this pod, I'm able to list this one. Think hope it makes sense. Yeah, comment if you have any questions. I'll try to address that. This is what I mentioned here. In the trust policy, you will give the trust policy. Trust has token. It has a service account and part of that string, right? Audience and then the subject. Then it will allow. Thank you.